By calling the world that you don't have kids, you are saying that you are the one that people, the training that our word of God, not the things very important. And that teaching and training for free for and things we write free of all this for and are very good. At the moment, because the data is or reference all the forms, respect all the forms. Changes. Really want as already.
Welcome everybody. I'm going to just continue while we wait for others to join us. Okay. Sorry for the interruptions. So, I was explaining the imagery here as regards reliability and validity. I want to believe the slide is quite explanatory. How to differentiate reliability and validity. Let's move forward. Okay. So again, the validity measures compliance. In other words, how much does the instrument, to what extent can it measure that thing we intended to measure? Okay. And also, reliability measure consistency. I'll say that again and again. Now, we have different types of validity tests or validity check. We have the phase validity, we have the content validity, we also have construct validity. Okay. In fact, we have 4 types of validity check. The fourth one is not mentioned here. Okay. But essentially, we'll limit ourselves to 2. That is the phase validity and the content validity. And of course, on the side of reliability check, we look at the Cronbach alpha. Cronbach alpha check is usually the commonly used check of reliability. Okay, this is a statistical concept that we use to check reliability. You can as well use test and retest method, equivalent form, but commonly used is the Cronbach alpha, what we use with our SPSS. Okay, so let's start with the phase validity check. What does phase validity check implies? Without bothering us too much, phase validity is all about an experienced statistician looking at your questionnaire and judging the questionnaire okay based on experience. Judging the questionnaire okay based on experience. That is phase validation. Okay, again, I've always said that questionnaire design is a collaborative effort. You must work with a statistician. You must work with an individual that is experienced in that particular field. Maybe you're in the field of vet medicine, or you're in the field of parasitology, or you are in the field of public health, public health individuals that are experts in the field, it's important you allow them in to check what you are actually trying to measure, if your instrument is appropriate or not. So the face validation is usually done by an experienced statistician, okay, that could, by merely looking at your questionnaire, judge the questionnaire as appropriate or not, just by mere looking at it based on experience. While content validity is a little bit more technical, which I will explain in a moment. Please kindly mute yourself. I'm getting interference here. Okay, so content validity. Let's start with content validity. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Just indicate with an emoji you can hear me so that I can continue. Just indicate with an emoji. So the next one is content validity. How do you design content validity? Okay, in the first place, is a system of validating your questionnaire using a panel. A panel is usually set for content validity. And this panel is made up of usually a 6-man panel. You have the potential respondent, you have your field experts, and you have the statistician. Okay? 2 potential respondents, 2 field experts, and 2 statisticians. Now, to each member of this panel, you are supposed to produce a copy of that questionnaire you have fully designed, and a copy of the validity score sheets are supposed to be presented or sent to this individual for them to assess your questionnaire. The validity score sheet is meant to be used as an assessment sheet for your questionnaire. I hope that is clear. While we also have the field experts. These are the people I mentioned the other time. These are people very knowledgeable and experienced in that field that you are researching in, or maybe the field you are researching on. And then you have the statistician. Okay? Now, this is a copy of a pre-testing form, or call it the validity form. And this is how it is structured. Now, your validity is intended to do, your validity check is intended to do 2 things. To measure the relevance of the item you have constructed in your questionnaire. And at times people design questionnaire and they tend to ask questions, they ask questions that are completely outside the scope of that research. Sometimes somebody wants to ask in his questionnaire, marital status. They want to ask religion. Okay? The fact remains that it's not all questions you should ask in the questionnaire. That is where the test of relevance comes in. How relevant is the question of marital status to the data you are trying to collect? How relevant is the religion of that individual in the data you are trying to collect? That is where we talk about relevance. So the panelists will use this form to judge each item in your questionnaire, either relevant or not, clear or not. So the panelists are supposed to score you based on this particular criteria. We have not relevant, relevant need major revision, relevant need minor revision, very relevant no revision. So the panelists will mark you accordingly here. We'll mark you under relevance, we'll also mark you. Somebody said, I'm not very audible. Am I audible? Am I not audible? Please kindly indicate. in the chat box if you can hear me clearly. Can we all hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? Hello, are we still there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I good enough? Okay, great. Thank you. So this is a copy of the testing form. And you can see this is a sample where somebody decided to score a particular questionnaire. And you can see the individual wrote here, rephrase or delete the question. That's item number 7. These are the different items in the questionnaire. You number your questionnaire accordingly so that you can easily be accessed using the test form. So you have number 1, number 2, just like that. And let me quickly say this at this point, that ideally, a questionnaire should not have more than 30 items. More than 30 items. You have just designed a questionnaire and you have more than 30 questions. We all know the reaction of people to questionnaire. Many a times, even many of us on this thread, if I give you a questionnaire to fill, the likelihood is that you will be a little bit reluctant to fill that questionnaire. If you now open the questionnaire, you are seeing 4 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages. The likelihood is that you tell me, no, I don't have time for this. So we usually factor that in when we design questionnaire. That is why I say ideally, your questions, your item, those questions are what we refer to as items. Ideally, your items should not be more than 30. If for whatever reason you feel that the item can be so many, why not break that research focus into 2 aspects or 2 phases and limit your questions so that you will not get a ton of when you present the questionnaire for people to fill. So you can see the comment here. There's no introductory question like, do you keep animals? So these are the way to score a questionnaire using the validation form. Okay. And of course, after scoring the questionnaire, then using the validation form, there's what you call the form, another form that is designed to calculate the content validity of the questionnaire. Recall I mentioned that there are 6 individuals that should make up the panel. We have E1 to E6. And the E1 to E6 will be assessing relevance. The small letter E1 to E6 will be assessing clarity. And you now use this particular form to compute the results submitted by each member of the panel. For question 1, what did the first individual comment? Did this score the person 4 under relevance? You write 4. Did this score the person 3? You write 3. That is how you do for each of the panelists and make up that particular panel validation protocol. So at the end of the day, you calculate here in this column how many indicated 3 or 4. Okay, 3 or 4 for all. If it is 3 or 4 for all, you say yes. That is how we came up with all these values here. If there are places where you have 2, that is no 3 or 4 for all, here we have 2 here, we have 2 here, we have 2 here. So here you put no. And then you come here, you say number of agreements. What's the number of agreements? Okay, then you calculate the number of agreements and write here. Okay, you have 6 agreements here, you have 6 agreements here. But in this case, you have 5 agreements, you have 5 agreements. And then you use that to calculate the item content validity index, as you can see on the screen. So that's how we calculate the item validity index here. Item validity index for relevance, item validity index for clarity. So at the end of the day, you are going to now sum up the number of agreements to form the scale content validity index. So for what is on this particular validation form, you have 35 years over 50. And when you divide, you're going to get 0.7. The same thing applies to here. Okay? So how do you now interpret this result for content validity? Okay? The content validity or the scale validity must actually be greater than or equal to 0.9. That is when you have a good scale. Okay? If both of them are greater than 0.9 or they are equal, then you have an excellent scale. But in a situation whereby either your item content validity index, scale validity index falls below 0.7, then you have to correct that particular instrument. It simply means you take back that questionnaire and look at those points that the assessors actually pointed out to adjust those areas before administering those questionnaire. Okay? Because most often when you publish, some of the editors or the reviewers will ask that what is the value for your content validity index or scale validity index? This is how we calculate it here. Okay? Now, the next thing we talk about is reliability check. I told you we have validity check, we have reliability check. For the reliability check, essentially we calculate the Kronberg alpha. Okay? The Kronberg alpha. Now, let me quickly say this, that it is not in every case that we do pilot tests, because the pilot test is to check reliability. It is not in every case of questionnaire that we do pilot testing. If you are maybe you are conducting a cross-sectional study, and essentially you are working with a finite population, which is your target population, you don't need to do a pilot test. The implication is that every member of that population will be included in your research. So pilot test in that case is not necessary. For instance, recently I conducted a research. My project student did a work on the outbreak, appraising outbreak of avian influenza in Southeast. Okay, and we got data from VOM on the different places where we had outbreak in the past 10 years. Now, because we are dealing with limited numbers of farms, and our goal is to collect samples from every farm, you don't need to do a pilot test for that kind of research. But if your target population, or maybe the sample you are going to take, your sample size will be a subset of a big population, then pilot testing is very, very important. And again, in pilot testing, we can talk of inclusive pilot testing and exclusive pilot testing. Maybe you want to study smokers. The goal of the questionnaire or the focus of your research is to study smokers. It is possible you are focusing your research on maybe Anambra State. You may decide to do a pilot testing that involves picking a sample from Ebonyi State. You pick a population that has similar features with what you want to investigate to conduct your pilot testing. That is an exclusive way of pilot testing. And you can also have an inclusive way. If I'm studying Enugu State, and my interest is to study pregnant women in Enugu State, I may decide to go to maybe Ogolo region or a particular local government in Enugu State and conduct a pilot test. Of course, at the end of the day, the population I conducted my pilot test on will still be included in the overall research work itself. That is an inclusive pilot test. The decision whether to go inclusive or exclusive may be largely dependent on economic factor. Okay? Instead of going to collect sample from people that at the end of the day you may not include them in your study, you may decide to include people, conduct your pilot testing on people that will ultimately be included in the research. Very, very important. And in pilot testing, it is expected that minimum of 30 respondents is ideal pilot testing. Minimum of 30 respondents. Okay? The usual thing is that when you collect your sample, you want to run an analysis on it to get the Krumbach alpha. For those that don't understand how to run Krumbach alpha, this is what we do on SPSS. I will explain in a moment. But essentially, you expect your Krumbach alpha value to be greater than 0.7. When you have Krumbach alpha greater than 0.7, you say it's high. Okay, the reliability of that instrument is high. But if you're looking between 0.6 and 0.7, then you can say it's fair, which is acceptable. But anything less than 0.6 is considered poor. Now, when you have a poor reliability result or output, the implication is that you have to review the instrument and adjust appropriately. How do you do that? In a couple of minutes. Somebody say I'm not audible. Am I still not audible? I have the mic in my mouth. Probably you increase the volume of your devices. So, like I said, for instance, if we are to conduct the research on 105 members of the community, and our goal is to use a Likert scale. 1 represents strongly agree, 5 represents strongly disagree. At the end of the day, we want to determine the internal consistency using our Krumbach alpha scale. How do we go about that? Okay. Of course, using your SPSS, after you have entered the sample into SPSS, you have entered the data rather into SPSS. Okay. The next thing to do is to click analyze. You go to scale, and then you will see reliability analysis model, and then you see alpha. That is the basic guide if you are using your SPSS. Depending on the software you are using for your data analysis, but I understand that commonly people use SPSS here. So the output you are going to see will look like this. Okay, the SPSS output. And then you have something like this. Let's assume you have something like this. An alpha value again of 0.07 indicates high consistency. Okay, while anything below 0.6 is considered poor. I've said that again. Okay, now, but how do you handle it in a situation whereby you turn out to have a low reliability output? Now, the SPSS statistics output will give you this information, and on the information you will see the highlights of specific items in your question. These are the questions in your questionnaire. Question 1, question 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just like that. And it will point out some of the questions that are bringing down the reliability check. You may decide to either adjust, modify, or you completely remove those questions completely from your questionnaire so that the Krumbach alpha can actually increase. So it's either you decide to delete it or you decide to adjust it accordingly. Okay? Now, it's important we have an overview of the flow chart of how to actually design your instruments. There are some of what I've said that I need to quickly put in perspective. Okay? The investigative question is your research question we discussed earlier on. Okay, and it is important from your research question, you want to do the preliminary analysis of your plan on that instrument. Okay, how do you intend to use that instrument to gather data? The choice of the question you are going to craft around, you may have to do some draft and redrafting before you get the best items for your questionnaire. And again, I've talked about testing. Okay? It is until you follow these 4 steps that you can consider your instrument ready for data collection. And again, I can't overemphasize this, that it is important you carry along a statistician in the course of your data analysis. I mean, in the course of your questionnaire design. Because except you understand how to analyze the work yourself. Otherwise, if you go to the field and you gather data that are not analyzable, then that would be a lot of waste at the end of the day. Okay? So, another important thing we need to determine in questionnaire design is your scale. What is the choice of scale you'll be using for your work? Are you going to be using nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, or ratio scale? These are basic statistical terms that you must be familiar with before you can understand how to design questionnaire. The nominal scale is a scale that measures magnitude but without specific direction. While the ordinal scale is the one that gives order to what you are measuring. For instance, for nominal scale, you are interested in knowing the location of an individual. That is nominal. Okay? You are interested in knowing the state of an individual. You are interested in knowing maybe the gender of the respondent. That is nominal. Okay? While the ordinal scale will be in form of Likert scale. It's more of ranking. One is greater than the other. Okay? While the interval scale are more of continuous variables we generate for quantitative research. Now, another important thing to decide is the approach you are going to use for this communication. This is your data collection. Are you going to give them those questionnaire one-on-one as stand with them to collect the data, or you want to give it to the individual to fill the form? This is very, very important. If at the end of the day, the result you are going to get from that questionnaire will be something worthwhile. Depending on the level of education or literacy of the respondent, you may want to decide either to sit with the individual to collect the sample directly. Are you considering using phone call or electronics means? We're still going to talk about this electronic means because technology has begun to play a big role in data collection now, and it made data collection very, very seamless. Okay? Are you going to send mail? These are very important things to decide. Another important thing is the structure of the items that will make up your questionnaire. Are you going to use structured items or unstructured item? What do you mean by structured item or unstructured item? Please don't forget that I keep using the word item. The word item means the question you have crafted out, you have constructed in your questionnaire. Okay? What is your understanding about rabies? That statement is described as an item in questionnaire design. Okay? Now, if in a situation whereby you gave option, a restricted option, okay, we say you are using a structured kind of question. If you give option for people to pick from, but if you are not giving options, maybe you wanted the person to just fill a blank space. That is an unstructured type of designing questionnaire. We're going to discuss the merit and demerit of such approaches. Okay? Now, strategic concern in instrument design. We have talked about the skill. Again, I said questionnaire is partly a function of your experience. Okay? Knowing the right skill to use will be likely a function of your experience vis-a-vis the data you intend to collect. And that is why I said a good questionnaire is baited by collaboratory efforts. That is why it's important after drafting your questionnaire, you need to take it through validation process so that people will make input and ask you, why not construct this way? Why not paraphrase this question this way? And then a statistician is very, very important here, because at the end of the day, you want to analyze that particular data. Now, you will be able to tell you that, okay, this will be the appropriate skill if this is your intended outcome, the outcome of that particular research. So your knowledge of scaling is very, very key here. And then communication approach, which I've talked about, maybe phone call, maybe using mail, electronic media. And sometimes, we now use Google Form for most parts now, which is quite impressive. Our time is running fast. I want to see how I can round up this class so that we don't go to the fourth session. So these are strategies that we need to bear in mind. Should the question be structured? Should the questioning be disguised? I talked about technology the other time. It's important you learn one or two skills that will help you in good designing of questionnaire, like technical skill. There's basic understanding. You can begin to just go to your Gmail and look at the accessory. You will see Google Form. Click on it, begin to do something on it. With time, you may be surprised. You get familiar with how to use Google Form and design your questionnaire, because it goes a long way to make questionnaire design very quick. It's also eliminates data, manual data entry, and it also saves time. Very, very important. And this talks about disguising study objective. And the idea of disguising study objective will be to minimize bias. One of the greatest challenges with the use of questionnaires in research tool is bias. And there may be the need for you to do that depending on the kind of research you are doing. Okay? And here I outline situation where you don't have to disguise. When your respondent is willing to share information, he has knowledge about what you are doing. It is important for every questionnaire that you state the purpose of the research for the respondents to be aware of what you are doing. Of course, in a questionnaire, there's need for confidentiality. You don't mention the name of the individual, but there should be an introduction on top of your questionnaire, introducing yourself and stating the purpose of that data collection, and also making it clear that the data collected will be held in confidence and anonymity. In other words, the identity of the individual will not be mentioned. Very, very important. So this is a dummy table of how a linker scale questionnaire looks like. I'm wrapping up. Questionnaire categories and structure. Now we have the administrative aspects. For every questionnaire, there's the administrative aspect. That administrative aspect is the aspect you are not asking the respondent. It is essentially for you to be able to categorize that questionnaire. And it's important you put in there. There are some online questionnaire platforms that can help you to establish the coordinate of that location. Maybe you are working on something related to epidemiology. You can activate that GPS such that it will be able to establish the location, the georeference location of that particular place. And that could be for administrative purpose, the local government of the place, the individual, and all that. And also we have the classification. Okay, the classification aspects of your item, your instrument, will be to categorize. It helps you to categorize. Maybe they are male, they are female, maybe depends on what you want to, how you want to explain the output of that particular research. Now, then you have the target question itself. If you are working on rabies, what exactly do you want to establish on rabies? You are working on trypanosomosis. It is the prevalence you are interested in. So that is the question you craft around that particular main purpose of the research and the target category of your question. And usually questionnaire is supposed to be divided into categories. You put them in perspective so that it will be easy for analysis. You have the demographic under classification, you have the economic, you have the sociological, you have the geographical. Very, very important. Our time is fast going. Okay. So question content should this question be asked? Now, it is important to understand the philosophy of your target population. There are certain questions that people are always reluctant to ask. You are asking about how many children do they have and things like that, or if they are married. Some people may not be disposed to answer that kind of question. So it's important to understand the philosophy, the culture, the norm of target audience, which is very, very important. Sorry, I need to mute somebody. Okay, good. So there are much to talk about with respect to questionnaire, which actually time will fail us. But let me quickly talk about sheer vocabulary. In your design of questionnaire, there are certain terminology you should be familiar with or aware of. If you ask that it has general meaning or general interpretation within your target population, that is what we call sheer vocabulary. In other words, the meaning is uniform. Okay? These are very, very important concepts to talk about. Time will fail us. I think I want to stop at this point and give room for questions so that we can make, if need be, if question comes up from other areas, then I may have to go there. So thank you very much for listening. Dr. Sanda, please kindly take over, please. Dr. Sanda, are you there? Dr. Sanda.
Thank you, Dr. Felix.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Please, let's ask our questions.
Okay, somebody is asking if I could share sample questionnaire that address most part of this. Yes, I can send across sample of questionnaire that has already been designed and addresses most part of this question. Thank you for that question. Any other question?
I've got a question.
Please go ahead.
Sometimes or normally one should calculate the sample size when, planning a questionnaire study. One should calculate the sample size.
Yes.
To know the number of, participants or respondents that you'll be recruiting into the study. Now, when you talked about Chromback alpha testing, and you said that you should have, or we should have a minimum of 30 respondents for the pilot testing.
Yeah.
So is it 30 respondents irrespective of the sample size that of those that you'll be recruiting into the study? Or, are they linked in some way?
Okay, thank you for that question. Now, we mustn't mix pilot testing with the actual study itself. The pilot study is like a feasibility study. Okay? It is generally recommended that in pilot testing, that you should have minimum of 30 respondents to calculate your Cronbach alpha. But of course, when you talk about the actual study itself, you have to calculate the sample size. Okay? And again, I said something the other time that sample size calculation does not come in every type of study. If you are doing a survey, maybe a census survey, you don't need to calculate any sample size, because the implication of that is that you are going to include everybody. So you are not taking any sampling. It's not a sampling survey. There's a difference between a sampling survey and a census survey. A census survey is the one that includes every subject in that population, while a sampling survey takes a number of that population to judge the rest of the population. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have less than a minute. Any other question?
Okay. I believe we don't have questions again.
If you have questions, you can put it on the
My
comment
hand is
section
up.
in the group.
Okay, somebody's hand is up, but we have less than 1 minute. Okay.